Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased that you're joining me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. We are living in incredibly difficult and challenging times, and this is a time for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we've been and where we're going. So put away the pencil and the paper, put away the notebook and the keys, set aside the shovel and hammer rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam, our bricks and mortar congregation here in Greater Cincinnati, specifically in Loveland, Ohio, and our Jewish community, our online initiative that we began over 15 years ago. Being online has allowed us to remain connected with each other, whether we're living around the corner or living around the world. But technology is but a tool. Ultimately, what is most significant is the voice of Judaism that we've been giving expression to here at Congregation Beth Adam for over 40 years. A bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes that we are not our ancestors, that we no longer need to mimic their words or parrot their thoughts, that we can create something new and dynamic, reflective of who we are and what we believe. And that's what you're participating in with me and with each other tonight. So I'm delighted you're here. Being online affords us the opportunity that people could chat with one another. I know folks do that on our website, and people leave messages on our Facebook pages. Please do that. Let us know where you're participating from. It also means we can time shift. You don't have to watch the service when we stream it at 7 o'clock. It also means that we can bring in conversations that I've recorded earlier, which I'm going to do tonight. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we are sharing this time together. On this Shabbat, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with family and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and shadows lengthen, the direction of day gives way to the stillness of night. It's time for us to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it's time for us to welcome the Shabbat. The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or b'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. At other times, in other places, we may feel fragile and alone. Yet here we join together to find strength, to build community as we look with wonder at the universe and seek our place within its vastness. To this place we come to lengthen our perspective. In this place we come to question and explore. In this place we awaken our imaginations. In this place we draw strength as we allow ourselves to dream. Together, we share the challenge of an ever-changing world, a world often beyond our control, incomprehensible and frightening. Together, we seek to find meaning, ease our fears, understand our purpose. Together, we share the burden and the blessing of responsibility. So I had the opportunity a couple days ago to sit down with my dear friend, Reverend Sharon Dittmar. And we had a conversation about how to have conversations. So it is really my pleasure to be here with Reverend Sharon Dittmar, and we're sitting in the same room. We've done some Zoom interviews during COVID, but now we are together again. It's good to see you.
Hi, bud.
How you been?
Good.
Good. And it's just great. So those of you who have joined us over the years know that Reverend Sharon Dittmar, we are fast and long-standing friends. We have known each other 20 plus years.
Yes.
And we have done a lot together. We've taught together. We've led trips to Israel together. We've argued together.
We have.
We've done all those things. And she's taught us, and she's been part of our conversations for a number of years. And you did a high holiday sermon as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad we have a chance to just sit and chat. And we were talking, we've been talking for probably an hour before we sat down here to talk with all of you. And I wanted to talk about the challenge of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We're living at a time that is hyper-polarized,
Mm-hmm.
hyper-political. We're in an election year. There are all kinds of issues running around America, issues about anti-Semitism, racism, diversity, misogyny, and it's oftentimes difficult to have conversations even with friends. So I just wanted to chat with you about how do you have a good conversation? Because you're somebody who's always been forthright with me. You've never held back, even when there were days I wanted you to.
I know. Well, okay, I think of a couple things. I think we are in a time of anxiety. That's real. And there's also been stresses, whether it's COVID, you haven't physically recovered or financially recovered, or you've been anxious about politics or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or trans issues or any number of things that are very real. Climate, activism, and desperate need. One thing I think is to have a difficult conversation. How are you and where are you? Like, do you feel okay? Can you engage in it today? Is a great question for everyone to ask themselves before they get into something. We don't always have that choice, right? We don't always get to think about it before we're faced with having to do something. But one thing is if you can consider, are you in a space for it? Like if you need to talk to a friend who you've seen them post something on social media and you really want to say something to them. A, I wouldn't respond on social media. I would point A.
Yes.
Point B, I'd call up that friend and see if you could meet them actually in person, looking right at them. Phone would be next best. And I think a lot of us have devolved to having important conversations online, and that's not a place to have them. You can't have a great dialogue. You can't read nonverbal cues, and it's a real miss for communication. So one, communicate directly. Two, take care of yourself. Consider the phase you're in. And I had a third one and it slipped out of the top of my head, Bob, as I was talking. It's going to come back to me. It's a big one.
Okay, it'll come back at 2 a.m. So we'll be back.
No, before we're done here, it's going to come back to me.
So, but I have to say, want to parrot what you said and emphasize social media isn't the place to have sophisticated and nuanced conversations. It is a setup for failure.
Yes.
And it is a place where it is easy to misinterpret.
Breed conflict even.
Right. Breed conflict and misinterpret. You know, you see a post and you the subtlety of it, or you misread it. You can't hear the tone, the intonation. That's why people often will put a little smiley face or a laughing face after something that they said and say, oh, this is really a joke. Because it's clear that sometimes when you write, so absolutely, social media is not the place for sophisticated conversations. The other thing too,
I remember what else I was going to say.
Okay, there you go. See, I gave you a little breather there.
Relationship. You can only discuss as much in many places as you have a relationship with someone. So some people won't go deeper or more complicated with you because you don't have a relationship. In complicated conversations, we move at the speed of trust. Or we move at the speed of trusting the process for which we are engaged in to have a conversation, right? So all of those things really matter. And I forgot the next part. Keep going, Bob.
Well, I think let's stick with that.
Okay.
Conversations move at the speed of trust. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you want to have a difficult conversation But if you don't have a relationship with the person prior to the conversation, it's very difficult to do it. Because even you and I were having some serious conversations before that. We've known each other a long time, and we trust each other, and we still trust each other. I'm finding, I have to say that trust seems to be more elusive, that even people who I thought had trusting relationships, oftentimes that trust is ephemeral. It's thin, and all of a sudden they hear something, and it's not that trust is shattered. There really was such little trust there that the person goes on the attack, and that someone can misspeak and people aren't willing to listen to an apology, or somebody can be thinking out loud and struggling with an issue, and the person listening decides they're going to attack, and it's no longer a dialogue between two trusting individuals. It's people coming at loggerheads very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. And how safe is the space in which you're having your conversation? There's some places I wouldn't really want to share my opinion because I don't consider them safer spaces. And if I am going to share my opinion in a place that isn't necessarily a safer space, I really have to think about what might the consequences be. I think that's really important now. Like, I could write a letter to the editor. It goes out to everyone in the public. I might get hate mail. I've gotten hate mail. Like, where are you in your life in understanding that's part of what happens now? And I did remember the other thing I was going to say, and it comes from the world of conflict transformation, which really says that to have conflict is a positive thing, and that conflict is neither good nor bad. We always have conflict. There's always been conflict. And that if you engage in conflict productively, you can clarify values and build relationship. So isn't that interesting? But again, this assumes we're not going to yell at each other about our opinions and stalk away when we don't agree. We don't always agree on everything.
Right.
We're still friends.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we work with people and be in relationship with people when we don't always agree with them?
I lost my train of thought.
Conflict transformation work. I was talking build relationship and clarify values.
So that build a relationship, that takes a long time.
Yes.
Because even couples who are married, let's not going to use partners, right? They've been together 20 years, fight.
You're always building a relationship. It's always work.
Right. It's always, and I think that's really important to understand that it isn't. I think sometimes we think that we can let it go, but it's always being built.
Yes. And I think conversation needs to be ongoing, right? And so if you want to start from somewhere, you might need to start listening. And in a polarized place, people don't want to listen. They're scared. They're feeling their lives are at stake. They feel like legislation might be hostile. So when I think like we've entered a very fraught political domain, and again, how are we going to have conversations with people who don't agree with us, right? One of the most important things to do is actually listen and ask questions. And I know some people are like, I'm not up for that.
Right. Well, I find oftentimes, and I try when I teach classes and I try to create an environment where there's going to be conversation, to say to people, the goal isn't to try to convince the other person why they're wrong. Because oftentimes, we're not listening to the person. As soon as you start talking, I'm preparing my rebuttal.
Exactly. You have it. So how can we listen and ask open and honest questions, a question we don't know the answer to, and actually wait to hear the response? Like, what makes you care so much about this? And we might find we can't work with certain people on certain things, or we're never going to agree with them. And then you end up trying to discern what is the ground you can work on and where do you agree, if anywhere.
And do we have to accept that there are some people we just can't talk to?
Yes. And maybe we shouldn't for a while. Maybe it's counterproductive. Maybe it's personally harmful. Maybe it, depending on your identities, puts you in a vulnerable or disempowered position. I think those are all things to be mindful of in the world of self-care.
Well, there's a challenge because there's certain places we have a choice whether we want to engage in a conversation. Sometimes if at work, we have to.
Yes.
Right. Some people are in different work environments where they have to weigh in on an issue, and, they have to sort of manage the landmines or step around the landmines of having a difficult conversation at certain institutions right now. That seems to be a reality. I mean, so other of us get to choose. We get to choose to talk to our friends when we want to talk to them, if we want to talk to them. There's intergroup work, interfaith group work, some issue that you've been involved in, I've been involved in. I mean, and there's even the conversations, I hope at a congregation, Beth Adam, we have created a space where people can explore ideas, where we give people some time to think, and that we're not trying to change each other. We're just trying to hear what we're saying. And I oftentimes ask people, what makes you uncomfortable with what you're hearing? Why does their idea make you
It's a great
uncomfortable,
question. That is a perfect, open, and honest question.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you ask because you don't know the answer, and it can't be answered with a yes or no. And it leads to deeper understanding. It would clarify a value. What does that person care about? What motivates them, right? I think in our world today, too, power does matter, as do relationships. And not everyone.
Talk about power.
I will.
Okay.
Not everyone wants a relationship with us. I've had people, it's been very clear they don't. And I've had to consider how, because I want to be gracious about that. But sometimes it's stung, but also it's real, right? Maybe we don't want relationships with some people, or they don't want relationships with us. The other thing is, I'm very aware my comments come, they're always in relationship to my identity. So I am an educated, upper middle class white woman, who's ordained as a minister, is heterosexual, and I have a lot of power. And
whether or not you feel
it. Whether or not I feel it, I have a lot of power. And many people don't have that, or are in a domain where they don't have that, right? Anyone can enter a space where their power has been removed. And depending on how much power you have, you may or may not want to engage in conversations differently. I would also say I would have answered this question differently 25 years ago, right? When I was a younger adult, when I was like in my 30s, I would have answered it differently. I had different ideas about changing minds. And as I've gotten older, I've felt like I'm not sure I ever changed anyone's mind by yelling at them.
Other than your kid.
And I've become, as I got older, a lot more interested in the conversations and the relationships. Maybe that's not where everyone's at, though.
Right. But I want to go back to something you said about power.
Yeah.
Misogyny is real.
Yes.
So as a woman, I mean, you describe yourself and you say you have power, but the other thing is, as a woman, there may be a situation where being a woman diminishes your power.
Yes, that can absolutely always happen. I have worked in the majority of areas I've had a fair amount of power as a woman.
Okay, because I was thinking there was just recently the congressional hearing about the 3 presidents about anti-Semitism. I don't want to.
They're all women called in. My heart.
Right, and there are people writing about that given the dearth, there's a few number of women who are presidents of universities. How is it that only women were called to account?
It was very clever, wasn't it?
And so, there's been some articles that I've been reading about the misogyny and the sexism that's inherent in that exists. And I want to be clear that our power can be shifting, our position.
Oh, we can enter a different space and we've lost power.
Okay.
I've entered spaces where my whiteness was a power, and then I've entered spaces where that was very neutralized because I was the racial minority. And that's different too. And it is also possible to enter a space where one is not even sharing power at all. It's being taken. And
so all this makes, this whole question of how do we have a frank conversation even more complicated, because it's not just sharing ideas, sharing words, struggling with an issue, struggling with a problem. It's also about how we perceive the other. who they are, what we think they represent, because frankly, someone could, they would perceive what you're saying based upon who they think you are. They're reading more
Absolutely.
into what you're saying. They're saying, "Oh, she's a minister. I know what she's really about."
Well, and some people give ministers a lot of power, and some people think nothing of clergy. So, right, like that's the weird thing that can happen. People can respect you for a certain thing or disrespect you for it at the same time. Society respects people in general for certain things, but you can enter a space where that's not as respected. And it is possible to have the rug slide right out from under you because of identities.
So, a conversation between two people who've known each other. Let's make it two people who've known each other for a long time. Difficult problem.
Yeah.
Political, social. What are the couple things they need to do? Because this is really, at the end of the day, what I really want to make sure is, how do we as friends, how do we as acquaintances, friends more than acquaintances, how do we keep on having the hard conversations to move
With people we know.
With people we know.
And we have a relationship with.
Right.
Okay. Well, I always think it's people before things. This is the way I orient myself. It's people before things. So I'm going to start that conversation like, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm actually going to listen. And if they tell me something really consuming, I'm going to think maybe my conversation needs to wait because I care about them as a human. Say it was Rabbi Barr, who has no problems ever.
Never had one.
I'm really going to listen because they're a human. And then depending on the topic, I might say, "I've been struggling with something I want to talk to you about. Do you have the space for that today? Should we set another time?" And I think if someone wants to know the topic, you could specify, like, what if we wanted to discuss anti-Semitism? Or what if we wanted to discuss, I don't know, maybe Rabbi Barr published something and I didn't agree and I want to talk to him about it, right? And I would tell them, like, I don't feel like we need to surprise those we care about in our relationship with about what we want to discuss. And then someone can figure out, I've had plenty of time to think about how I want to respond, but they haven't, right? And so I want to respect that. And then where do we have that conversation? Where feels comfortable? My home, your home, neutral space, the office, what feels good? And then I think I want to try and share what my concern is, and then I want to listen. I just want to listen.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. Particularly, I think, and the reason I wanted to have this conversation is I feel like we're losing it, not you and me, but societally, the idea of quality conversation. I feel like we're living in a time of the easy put down, the quick retort, the zinger. It feels like that's become sort of the mode of operation. And I think also, given COVID, we were all very separated from each other. Even though we came out of it, we're not fully out of it. And learning having good conversations, learning to dialogue again, it's a skill. I don't think it's like riding a bike. I think actually you can forget how to do it.
And that's a really good point. So also, I just assumed it would be in person, and like Bob, and I would ask to meet.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of having long-term relationships. And I feel like so many things right now are transitory in a lot of people's lives. There's movement, there's challenges, and getting back to sort of a slower pace where people actually can talk to each other and have the time, because it also takes time. To have a real conversation is more than a 2-minute phone call. That's the other thing. You have to make time for people.
We have to make time, and to have those conversations, we need to have kept investing, right? So like, if I hadn't talked to Rabbi Barr in 5 years and I wanted to speak to him about an article he wrote and was published, a letter to the editor, that's one conversation. If we'd been talking all the time in the last 5 years, that's an entirely different one. And I'm going to learn more from that conversation. You know, when I say, what inspired you to write that? What were you thinking about? What might have been some concerns you had? I would learn different level of things because we would have more trust because we'd been in relationship. And I don't think we're good at maintaining relationships. I actually think a lot about social technology, actually breaks apart relationships. I have to work harder to maintain relationships with my family and friends than I did in the last millennium.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Even though I could travel easier to get them and I could see pictures of them on social media, I feel like to have a relationship with them,
Okay.
I have to work harder.
Got it. Yeah. Well, this is really great. I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about talking. I hope this is something that you'll consider, thinking about the process of conversation, because it's absolutely important. And it's absolutely important that in this sort of these fraught times that we practice skills, learn the skills, and talk to those others that we can have a good conversation with, recognizing that there will be times that
You don't agree.
you don't agree.
I mean, sometimes it's important to be like,
We don't agree.
we don't agree. I welcome you at my table every day, but we don't agree on this.
We agree on this. This is a good conversation. I hope you agree with us as well. And we're glad you're here. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this. It is essential that we have conversations with one another, even difficult conversations. It is through speaking with one another, listening to one another, that we build bridges of understanding. I know it can be challenging, and there are times perhaps that those conversations can't take place, but we must look for those opportunities. So I hope that the conversation that Reverend Dittmar and I had gave you some insights and tools perhaps so that you could have some of those conversations yourself. Everything, everywhere comes from one source. Our lives, all life, spring from that cause. Each thing, everything is made of the same matter. Our lives, all life is inseparable and of that ground. We are each of us, uncommon expressions of that source, an intelligence unfolding to live one certain life. Our earth spins through space, incredibly alive, and our nature, and for all that lives, is to flourish and then to die. And everything everywhere must eventually cease. Our life, all life, must return to its field. All of us, each of us, resides ever so humbly to become again, one again with the earth. We are, every one, a source and benediction of life. And then if you have some wine or juice, join with me. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup. For we are part of nature, which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we've gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of the wine upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Ruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Ruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And we say, l'chaim, to life. I'm delighted that you've joined with me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. I encourage you to go to bethadam.org, bethadam.org. That is our website, and there you can find out about upcoming events, adult education, as well as upcoming services and other programs that we're having in the weeks ahead. I look forward to sharing other services with you, whether our streaming service or our hybrid service, which you need a Zoom link for, or an adult education program, or a midweek program. We have a special one coming up on February 21st. I don't want to give it away yet, but take a look at our website and you'll learn more about it in the weeks ahead. So we end with the words we end with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings to the day, and may we know blessings to the night. May health be for our children and for all people, and all things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings, and may we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Ken Yehi, let it be. Shabbat Shalom.